This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, all that other fun stuff. That's Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined on an early Wednesday morning by my guy, Mr. Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Matt Russell, how are you doing, my friend, heading into week 4 of the NFL?
I'm good. I'm excited about week 4. We're talking a little Wednesday morning action here, so it's nice to kind of get this first conversation about week 4 with you, with the listeners. Monday night went extremely well. Those are the types of things that you need after weird stuff happens on Sunday, which, of course, as we talk about and we'll continue to talk about, always happens. Always getting weird stuff. So, you know what? We'd like it to just be normal, right? Like having the Lions on the money line on Monday, like it felt like we were owed something, but it's like, you're just allowed to win a bet if you handicap it correctly. And I'm like, really? That is an option? I had no idea that was actually a thing that we could do. We could just handicap something correctly and have it win. Like, I don't fully grasp that through 4 weeks or 3 weeks, that's already been kind of beaten out of me. But you know what? We're undaunted, my friend. We're undaunted. We're rallying. Here we go.
Honestly, what a wild week 3 it was. And having games flip, we'll obviously get there when we discuss said games that flipped. We'll say that much. Last week for me, the record last week was another 6-10 week. And I know this sounds crazy. I know this will sound crazy, but would you be surprised at how many of those flips just drastically went against me? I think like off the top of my head, I know 3 of those blocks went completely against me in terms of the Jets somehow like not fake covering, they cover, but you know what I'm saying? The Jets game going the other way. We obviously know what happened in the Eagles game. And of course, the Niners, that safety at the end, like just complete bleepery going on. But hey, that's the NFL. That's why we're here. And also the importance of understanding, we'll get to this game, obviously, but the Rams and Eagles, right? You can watch that game and say that you bet on the Eagles, and congratulations, you cashed the bet, right? But that's not the right side, and that's okay. We can all acknowledge that. We can acknowledge that's one of the worst beats we've seen in the history of bad beats. But that's the beauty of what we do here.
It's so bad because it's one where if you've been doing this for 25 years, like I have, like you do the math no matter what the scenario is, right? Like I'm even just watching Seattle and New Orleans going like, I wonder how Seattle can blow them. Like, 4 touchdown lead's nice, but like, it'd be nicer. 5 touchdown lead, right? Like you're just kind of like, I've seen it theoretically happen before that a team comes back from 4 touchdowns, in the second half. Because it happens like one time, right? And when you watch enough games, like you're going to sort of see everything happen. I got to tell you, man, and part of it was because like the Browns were kicking the game-winning field goal, and I, was on the Browns money line in that game too, and it literally was happening at the same time, like 2 screens at the same time. And my wife had just come down the stairs, and I was like, "We need a field goal here and a field goal here." And like the harder one was the Browns one, right? Because like that thing was like a 60-yarder. And like he makes it, and I'm like, yeah, it's like let's go, bro. I'm like, I am not even done saying like let's go. I haven't completed the final O in my 11 let's goes, and the Rams have had their kick blocks, and it like never. I did the math obviously when like the Eagles were going for 2, where they could go up 3, and then we go to overtime, and then the Eagles could win by a touchdown in overtime. And therefore, like, I've got that math under control. And obviously you're always kind of worried about maybe like a pick 6 or fumble type situation, right? But once they're lining up for a field goal, especially one that was easier, right? It was like 44 yards, 45 yards.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even think of it at the time, but of course after or immediately after, I'm going, that dude could have kicked that ball 50 yards right. He could have kicked that one into the stands behind the sideline. and it still would have gone better than the way it had been, right? And it's obviously, just the bounce going directly, to Jordan Davis, and the insult of having it be the biggest guy on the field on most, if not all fields, though potentially not this week. Yeah, just incredible,
The fact that he could have just went down.
shock and awe. Of course he could have.
But for those that might be new here, here's what we do on the pod. Other than, discuss the horrible bad beats from the week before, I'm going to give you a pick on each and every game against the spread. And then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, and where it could be heading into kickoff. I then come out on the other side with a much more informed pick. I try to play the role of the viewer, and sometimes Matt convinced me to change my pick. And other times, foolishly, I don't listen. But that's a joke. That's a bit. That's the show. Big shouts to Spencer Rattler and the Saints. That was a funny switch last week.
Highlight of the show last week.
I watched literally the first touchdown scored by the Seattle Seahawks in that game, and then was like, all right, that's a wrap. And then, when you get the Fox update, kick return touchdown, I'm like, all right, no need to turn that game on at all. Perfect. But here we are.
Yeah.
We're heading into week 4, which I know that becomes a bit every week, I feel, every year, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's week 4. But I'm going to say it. I can't believe it's week 4.
Oh, come on. We got to wait at least till October before we start busting out. I can't believe it.
Week? Which is next week.
Right.
We're here.
Yeah.
We're here. Let's begin with the Seahawks as 1.5 favorites in Arizona, taking on the Cardinals. An NFC West showdown as the Seahawks are coming off a blowout win versus the Saints, while the Cards coming off a tough road loss in San Francisco. I just think the Seahawks are the better team here, like when I match them up. And I think the Seahawks right now appear to be running just a better fit operation, a more tight-knit operation, as opposed to the Cards, who were just shooting themselves in the foot against Mac Jones and the Niners last week, dropped clutch passes, fumbles, just like kind of all over the place here with the Cards. Now, I know they're coming back home, and that might be a reason to be on them, but again, I just think I like the Seahawks as a better operation. So I'm going to lay the points, or the 1.5 here with the Seahawks. What say you, my friend, on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think I agree with you as far as the Seahawks being the better team. That is kind of really just more on, as the kids say, vibes than it is really any significant backing of statistics. Because even if you look at last week's game against the Saints, right, you mentioned just the idea of like Spencer Rattler and obviously the hilarious switch, the first time ever on the show that you just went back like 3 games later and was like, hang on a sec, I'm haunted by the Spencer Rattler element to this. It kind of wasn't really Spencer Rattler's fault. It was just this real special teams catastrophe. There was like, I think 1 turnover, 1 interception by Rattler. And if you actually go and look at the yardage in that game, strangely enough, I'll put it this way, it does not equate to a 44-13 type of a game. First downs are 22-21, total yards, 320 to 284. And so it's tricky because you don't want to be like, well, the Seahawks got lucky because, if they needed more touchdowns, or if their offense was on the field more because they weren't blocking punts and returning punts and all that kind of stuff, then they could have accrued more yardage. But the thing is that the market has, I guess, taken that result to heart. And this line in the look ahead line was Arizona -2.5. And I don't know that there's anything I'm really looking to downgrade Arizona for last week. They get the cover. You mentioned just like how brutal it is. You're sitting there going, well, the 49ers might not win, but if they win, they're going to win by 3. And then that safety happens. And you're like, now they're just going to win by 1. And immediately Arizona becomes way more likely to cover. But, I think to me, while it wasn't pretty, and listen, Marvin Harrison got me guillotined from my guillotine fantasy league. The defense is still pretty good for Arizona, and it's done a really nice job over the course of this season. Obviously, the Saints, not exactly the most difficult challenge there ever was, but again, the line has moved now, as you mentioned, to Seattle, favored on the road by 1.5. And really, all that's happened is that they struck kind of gold in that first quarter against the Saints. And we
Yeah.
thank them for it, those of us who had Seattle in Survivor. But it also doesn't really mean I should be going out of my way to bet on this team on a short week with a line that's really quite drastically changed. And obviously, the mechanics of how that's changed are twofold. One, the Seahawks have blown through the top of their preseason rating and range, right? So before the season started, they are, lined at around 8.5, 7, 8 wins. That's about a league average team, right? You can kind of make an adjustment for their schedule and sort of see them as a little bit of a below average team. They go and they beat the Steelers on the road. That's not a team that I think is very good. We'll talk about
Mhm.
them here in a second, literally probably a couple of seconds from now. And then, like I said, they beat the Saints. And so you go, hey, is that enough for them to fly through and now be rated in the same tier as, like the Seahawks or honestly, even the 49ers? And I'm not quite believing in it just
Yeah.
yet. And meanwhile, of course, part two in all of this is that the Cardinals, who are rated as, a slightly above average team when you factor in strength of schedule, now all of a sudden they're below average because they lost that game last week. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't really compute to me either. And of course, they had the injury to James Conner, and like while that's not ideal, we don't do a ton of adjusting for running back injuries, right? Like this change in their rating is more reflective of a quarterback injury than it is a running back injury. So, I think one way or another, this is an overreaction. Now it's tricky because that overreaction comes within a field goal. So,
Yeah.
like the Cardinals and 49ers game, you're going into it thinking, well, one of these two teams is going to win by 3 if it is, in fact, a close game. And only when things get janky when it comes to like safeties and stuff does that become a problem. So, I'm going to go with the Cardinals here because it's just a classic buy low, sell high circumstance here. And I don't really understand why this number is the way that it is. Next week, Seattle already in the look ahead market is only -1.5 against Tampa Bay. This rating for them now would
Wow.
suggest that line should be 3.5 next week.
Mhm.
And if you think 3.5 is probably too high against Tampa Bay, then ipso facto, you kind of have to think 1.5 on the road here is too high, as in they probably shouldn't be the favorite. So again, like if I think that this game is 51-52% for the Cardinals, and it's being sort of rated like it's a 53% chance that the Seahawks win, then like I kind of have a problem with that. And listen, I might end up being right in my initial instinct that the Seahawks are just better and that they can go on the road and get this win. But it just from a betting perspective, like the value is not in the Seahawks this Thursday. It has been sucked out of the betting market and pretty quickly once this line got reopened on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think this conversation too is perfect for people who have been longtime listeners of this show and understanding like what you're talking about there with like the value and the market bet and how that translates versus, like as we joke around all the time, I'll come on and say like, oh, vibes. Like I just think the Seahawks are better. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very
Sure.
interesting,
Yeah.
I think, for people to understand the difference in how, we'll talk about certain things and have the understanding that, this will be a good game. Like I'm actually like it's rare sometimes these Thursday nighters. It's like
Yeah.
even a divisional matchup, it'll be like, I don't know about this game. I don't know what's gonna happen here. I am actually kind of excited to watch this game on Thursday night because it could go either way, and I think that's fun, right? Like that doesn't
Yeah. There's nothing.
translate a lot on Thursday nights.
Yeah, there's nothing dumber than like the ball knowers thing, but like this is definitely, if there was such a thing as like ball knowers or like hardcore like people who are really interested in the NFL and in football, like this is a very interesting game. It's a very high leverage game, right? And it doesn't have those teams that are on your like top 2 or 3 tiers of like, oh, I
Exactly.
got to watch this team this week.
Yeah.
But like you got to get there somehow, right? And I don't
Mhm.
know that either of these teams are necessarily going to get there, especially relative to an NFC matchup that's going on next Thursday night that you're going to be interested in. Spoiler alert for next week, everybody.
Yeah.
But like this is a really interesting game beyond the fact that it's like a pick 'em game and that the market, I don't know if the market even knows who should be favored in this game, which is a really kind of fascinating thing for those of us into betting. And I imagine if you're listening or watching this, like that would be you.
Yeah, it's also like the beauty of it, right? Like that's exactly what this stuff is about to me, right? It's like the beauty
Yeah.
of it is I don't know what's gonna happen.
No, nobody knows what's going to happen, right? It's just
Right.
being on the valuable
Yeah.
side to give yourself the most opportunity to be. It's like, and again, we'll talk about the 49ers, but it's like that 49ers Cardinals game, right? Where it's like if there's a
Oh yeah.
couple extra points to be out there had, like that might make the difference over the course of 100 games. That might make your 56% a 57%, or your 50% a 51%, or something like that, right? Like this is the stuff that matters when it comes to betting, right or wrong in the end.
For sure. Big facts there. Big facts there indeed. We'll move on to Sunday's action, and this is what a Dublin game, NFL Dublin. This is where we're at right
Yeah.
now. We're into the early morning, full day. They don't want me to get up off my couch from 9 a.m. in the morning all the way until midnight. But here we are, Vikings 2.5 point favorites against the Steelers here. It's a very weird matchup to me here because the Steelers last week beat the Pats and it was ugly. And I don't even know if the Steelers should have won that game. There's lots going on. Maybe we'll talk more about what was going on with
Hell no.
the with the Pats when we get to their game. It was an ugly win for the Steelers. Carson Wentz, he held down the fort for the Vikings in a blowout home win against Cincy. But I kind of feel like that might have been more about your man's Jake Browning more so than, hey, Carson Wentz, maybe things aren't going to fall off the rails for the Vikings. I don't know. And how
Right.
is
Yeah.
who's going to the normal question I normally bring up that we don't know the answer to until after it happens. How are these teams going to react to traveling to Dublin and spending time there heading into the game? I'm just going to take the points here. I'm taking the points with Pittsburgh. If from a football standpoint, I know one of the things you talk about a lot is the veteran quarterback against this Minnesota defense and all the blitzing and non-blitzing and different exotic defenses they'll come to
Hmm.
play with here. So like Aaron Rodgers should be okay with that. Even washed Aaron Rodgers, I hope. But yeah, I'm just taking the points
Yeah.
here. I'm not trying to get too complicated with anything with these two teams and in Dublin. I wish it was 3, obviously, but we rarely get 3s anymore.
Sure.
So I'll take the 2.5.
No. Yeah, this one I hate to be like, oh, it's another tough one. It's like, yeah, well, these are pick 'em type
But it
games,
is.
right? Like this is the
Yeah.
NFL, right? It's like, yeah, but it
Mhm.
is. But it is for a reason, right? And again, that's why we talk about this stuff, particularly on a Wednesday, as we kind of like suss this all out, right? Because the market was headed towards Minnesota. I was even on my podcast. I was like on Tuesday morning, I was like, grab that Minnesota -2.5 because I think we are headed to 3.
Mhm.
All right. So like the headline to this, the sort of intro to this is
Mhm.
you mentioned right the Aaron Rodgers, the Flores, and like, oh, how are these teams going to react to going to Europe or whatever? And the headline is, what if we had basically the exact same example to have gone off of in recent memory? And you're going, wait a second,
Ah.
what? Because nobody remembers this game. The Jets went to London last year with Aaron Rodgers to take on the Vikings. Like we literally have this, everybody except Aaron Rodgers, right? Like it's not, wasn't involved necessarily. And Flores was like way up in Aaron Rodgers' grill, if you will,
Yeah.
right? There was 3 turnovers in that
Is that a
game,
Missy
held
Elliott
him to
song?
200.
Why
What?
you all in my
Three
grill?
turnovers in that game? You've come to the wrong place if you're looking for
I'm being stupid.
Missy Elliott, Missy misdemeanor Elliott. I'm more of a
Uh,
yeah. Anyway, let's just move on. They stuffed the Jets to the tune of 36 yards rushing last year. I'm trying to ignore it. I'm trying to ignore it all. And yeah, like I said, 3 interceptions thrown by Rodgers, and even that game though was
hmm.
23-17 Vikings. So they go and they turn the ball over a couple of times themselves, right? This was a grim football game. This was a classic, overseas brutal game. 254 yards to 253 yards. So for all of like the Vikings offensive greatness and the guru managing Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell managing Sam Darnold, like they still only managed 250 yards as well. So it was a pretty rough game, but it was basically Aaron Rodgers just turning this ball over and over and over again. And I think,
Hmm.
people have as good of a memory as I do, especially the ones who are deep into the weeds with that sort of thing. And they go, yeah, like it didn't go great for Aaron Rodgers against this defense last year. on this same sort of, trip. And so that's the only real reason I can sort of see this line moving up. And it's just sort of a recognizing of that, because the Vikings went from their readjustment, and this is a crazy thing we talked about last week with Cincinnati and Minnesota, right? The readjustment for both of those quarterbacks going down and having the backup quarterback play. But the readjustment for having Carson Wentz went like below an average football team, right? Below 50 out of 100 in our rating system. Well, they're back to like 57, which is basically where they started at the start of the season, which is like not the greatest sign for JJ McCarthy, by the way, that after one game, everybody's like, yeah, it might just be like the Vikings might just be as good as they were, before the season started, when we didn't know about JJ McCarthy. Then JJ McCarthy wasn't very good, got hurt maybe. And, now it's Carson Wentz, and he was only there for I forgot how recently Carson Wentz got there. I was giving him credit for being there for a few months. He's in there for 4 or 5 weeks, basically. So again, that's kind of a lot for Minnesota, for an adjustment. Now, the problem is, as I, referenced before, watching that Steelers Patriots game was infuriating last week, right? So as much as, there's multiple ways to lose a bet and multiple ways to be sort of very annoyed by it. We talked about the quick gunfire that was Jordan Davis running down the field, the long drawn out torture chamber that was Patriots Steelers, where the Patriots turned the ball over 5 times, 2 times literally in the end zone for touchbacks in a game that was 14-14, that had the Steelers offense basically demoted to the point where Aaron Rodgers was just throwing up balls down the field to DK Metcalf and then crying his eyes out for defensive pass interference calls that were getting called that were not necessarily defensive pass interference calls. So, I'm dying to fade the Steelers, which means everybody else is kind of dying to fade the Steelers, which again is why the market has moved this number where it has, right? So to get to 2.5, you got to do some pretty wild stuff to get us from, Pittsburgh -1.5, which I believe was the open on this, to Minnesota -2.5. That is a big time move for, again, no real injury situation here. So it's funny, you've flipped your pick, and I haven't even said anything that would warrant the flipping of the pick, other than the Rodgers thing. I'm just saying the Rodgers stuff from last year, because obviously different offense, different team around him, different, here we go again, vibes, right? His Steelers vibes are considerably better than the Jets vibes, certainly later on in the season last year as well. Again, this is kind of like the Cardinals thing, right? Where it's well, if this market is just going to move to the point where it's going to move, if we get to 3, then yeah, man, I got to take the Steelers here, because none of the rest of this makes sense in the same way that honestly the Seattle Arizona thing makes a ton of sense. Neither of them really make a ton of sense, but we're within that 3-point range, right? Where, listen, this is going to probably come down to a field goal one way or another, and maybe the point spread doesn't matter in this game either.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, right? Because I keep trying to think about what used to be 3-point lines and how valuable the 3 points are. And then now we just don't get that anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So you could talk yourself into before, hey, I'm going to take the 3 and, live or die with the field goal. And now it's well, you could take the 2.5, but what does that really do? Doesn't really do much, right? It's so rare now.
Until it does, right?
Until
somebody until there's a safety, and then all of a sudden, oh God, it did it.
Until there's a safety holding in the end zone, and I'm just cursing, doing quick math, no. But yeah, the reason for the switch here is just about the matchup there on the defensive end. That was a big part of my question asking, and you answered said question. And hey, that was enough to convince me to switch the pick from the Steelers to the Vikings -2.5 in Dublin. We will move on to big boy matchup on Sunday. We got the Ravens as 2.5-point favorites in Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Ravens got to be the most frustrating team just to watch in terms of crushing losses, late bad fumbles, lame play calling in the red zone. I just don't understand it, because they're a good team. They just can't execute. And it's the weirdest thing ever that doesn't make any sense. And then there's Kansas City. In Kansas City, you watch them and you're this team isn't that good, but somehow Mahomes is there making plays, Thornton is there making plays and dropping passes, but then making an even bigger, tougher catch like 2 plays later.
Yeah.
I'm just like, wait, who is this
Right.
guy? What's happening right
Right.
now? So much going on.
Totally.
I'm on the Chiefs here plus the 2.5 points, and it's just because KC at home, the institution of KC versus the lack of execution from the Ravens. That's where I'm at right now. Because like Derrick Henry can't keep fumbling, but I'm sure he probably said that heading into last week, right? And like
Right. Yeah.
their fourth down, like gotta have it plays, as we like to call it. I just don't understand how their offense can be that bad in gotta have it moments. And you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. I don't understand. Their offense should be equivalent to whatever the tush push is. They should have their version of whatever that play is.
Yeah.
Just a go-to play that doesn't get stopped. You have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
They can't figure it out. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm on the Chiefs plus 2.5 points. I don't really like it because I think the Ravens are better, but I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah, guess what, guys? Another tough one. So the market refuses to downgrade the Ravens, right? Like they blow the game to Buffalo, doesn't matter. They're 12, 13-point favorites the next week to the Browns. They end up covering that game by quite a bit, but as we talked about last week, which led us to the Browns and the Browns money line, is that the box score wasn't all that pretty for the Ravens. And then it also, by the way, led us to the Lions money line, right? So like the good news was, the bad news was you lose a game by taking the Browns plus all of those points against the Ravens, but you analyze the box score, you analyze what happened in the game, and you're able to win back not just that bet, but a couple fold on backing the Browns and the Lions the very next week. But yet the market still just goes, no, Ravens are good, man. Like we're going to keep them up here in that like 74 type of a range here. And part of that also is because Kansas City didn't look all that great against the Giants, right? That was a classic Giants giveaway game on Sunday night where there was a path for them to win that game. And there was certainly, if they had basically any other quarterback, I think they probably end up covering that game, or at least pushing the closing line of 6. So the Chiefs haven't really moved from their previously downgraded rating because, again, like why would a discernible market wouldn't move the Chiefs up? I think their market probably should move the Ravens down a little bit, and therefore, yeah, man, I think you're probably getting a little bit of value here with the Kansas City Chiefs. More than that, I think this is a really good opportunity for a teaser leg where you're getting the Chiefs plus 8.5 at home. Like to me, that's more interesting than kind of looking to back the Chiefs, who again, like don't have a lot of faith in still after that game to defend Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and to honestly do anything in the same way that the Lions did, right? Like the Lions were able to run right down the middle of the Ravens, and one of the things to look for is Nnamdi Madubuike and his availability, because that was the key thing for a bet on the Lions beyond just the sort of market concepts that we talked about, is that like, yeah, if you're going to have a giant hole in the middle of your defense, you know who is a bad team to face? The Detroit Lions. We're going to just run a variety of different plays and have like Amon-Ra St. Brown in there blocking and all kinds of different blockers coming across, trap blocks and all this stuff, right? Creating holes up the middle. It's not the same for the Chiefs, right? Because this is Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Now, maybe they're able to pull that kind of stuff off. Maybe Andy Reid is watching that game closely. He's deep into the all-22, and he's like, hey, let's just run these plays because we can do that. We just don't do that. So, again, maybe, the Ravens get him back, and then they're just kind of fine back up the middle from a run defense perspective. So, obviously, there's a lot to kind of figure out here, but just from a strictly numbers perspective and a betting perspective, like plus 8.5 with a teaser leg, for the home team here, who's again still pretty desperate for just playing better at this point, to me, that's the only way that I would kind of look to the Chiefs here, unless we saw kind of a flat 3. Because, yeah, man, like you said, like the Ravens should be more terrifying. I think they are terrifying, but like the problem with them is the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson offense is an explosive offense, right? Like they have all the plays for the 40-yard gain. It's when they need the 1 or 2 yard gain, right? Because, how do you stop Derrick Henry? Well, you stop him from getting going. And you can do that when they're on, first or second and goal at the 3 or 4 yard line. It's a different story when it's at the 1. It's a different story when you have the entire field that you have to defend.
Mhm.
right? And so like if I don't think the Ravens are necessarily going to turn into like the Chiefs as far as being a poor red zone offense team, which is another thing that obviously terrifies me about the Chiefs. Yeah, I don't want anything to really to do with the Chiefs here unless you're getting me into some sort of teaser leg situation here. And even then we're gonna have to find a second pairing for that. So hopefully we do at some point, either on the show or throughout the week.
Do you know what the interesting thing is here as I change this pick to
Mhm.
the Baltimore Ravens at -2.5? The interesting thing for
He's
me
making
here,
changes, folks.
we're making changes
Yeah.
here, but the thing is, the reason why this change is being made is because I realize the emotional nature that I come into this with sometimes, right? And the emotions of
Okay.
what I just watched with the Baltimore Ravens and the frustration of what I just watched
Hmm.
with the Baltimore Ravens. And sometimes it's a reminder that you got to take your emotions out of it sometimes, and know that,
For
hey,
sure.
they might just bounce back. And the reality is the Chiefs are a tough watch. Like, as you said earlier
Yeah.
as well about the Giants game, any other quarterback and maybe, the Giants win that game. Like, I don't know if I've seen another. I mean, we'll get to the Giants, but
Sure.
I don't know if I've seen
Yeah.
a quarterback throw it out of the end zone. What was it, like 4 straight plays in the red zone? And
It was
it's just like,
infuriating.
what are we doing here, right? So the
I
box,
tweet it,
the final
it's
score makes it look
yeah.
like the Chiefs won that game by a lot, but watching that game, it was a drag.
Yeah, it was a tough scene, and it's the most low hanging fruit, and it's most as basic as possible. But for me to just actually finally just say like, I don't ever want to watch Russell Wilson play football anymore.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get
I
there.
just
We're soon.
that's
We're
you know
soon
what I
at
mean.
that
And there's
game. Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, there's just yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I just don't want to do it. I wanted to.
I'll
Don't
save
want
out
to.
a chunk where we can go in on Russell Wilson. It's coming up after this next
Yeah.
game, though.
Yeah.
But
Good.
before that game, we're going to get to the Eagles, who are 3.5-point favorites in Tampa Bay, taking on the Bucks. And the Eagles, I would like to know. I have a question. Am I betting on the Eagles team of the first half where the offense can't get anything going and they're not doing anything? Am I betting on the Eagles team that's the second half offense where they realize, oh, yeah, we have AJ Brown and he is just a beast and is just bully balling that poor DB and just
Yeah.
dominating him for the whole second half? Right. Which Eagles team am I betting on? Do you think I can find that out before the game? I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Possible anyway. But
Yeah.
my early lean is a Bucks. I'll say my early lean is a Bucks at the +3.5.
Yeah.
And that's just because home team, Baker being Baker, getting points. I'm going to be on that
Yeah.
side. I know the injuries are piling up, right? Mike Evans gone, but maybe they're getting worse and Godwin back. That's the hope. I'd like to know. But this is a weird
Potentially.
game for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, Matt. I don't know what's going on here, but my lean is on the Tampa Bay Bucks at the +3.5. More based on the number.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like the gravitational pull that is the hook, right? You're getting that
Mm-hmm.
+3.5. You're like, ooh, tell me more.
Right?
Um,
The problem is,
yeah. So okay, like the Eagles, the Eagles, like when pressed, it's like, yeah, if we absolutely have to, then we'll go into our like throw the ball offense, right? And you're
yeah,
just like, if it was just kind of always like this, you'd be a lot more fun to watch, and it wouldn't be so infuriating, and so on and so forth.
mm-hmm.
I mentioned that Jordan Davis, right, like the biggest player on all of the fields. The Buccaneers have signed, and it looks like he's going to play. Former Florida Gator, who God, his name's escaping me right now, but he's 400 pounds.
Oh,
He's 400 pounds. We might have a
okay.
400-pound guy lining up next to Vita Vea in the middle of the defense. Now, this is not any reason to like make a bet per se,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like I'm a big advocate of like if you see a problem, like try to solve it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
just complain about like the Eagles like running the tush push all the time. Deploying a 400-pound man next to a 330-pound man, like is certainly like trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I like that. You'll remember like that the Buccaneers kind of have had like quote unquote the Eagles number a little bit. Like in like last
Yep.
year, I believe they won pretty convincingly, but there was a bunch of injuries on the Eagles side, and that's a thing that kind of concerns me. Moreover, right? It's just like again, what are the Eagles? Like what are we doing here as far as like ratings and stuff? Because like the rating doesn't really come down for the
No.
Eagles, right? And like you can even look ahead to next week, right, where they're 5.5-point favorites against the Broncos, and like that. I guess is fine because like we keep giving the Eagles the benefit of the doubt. And, again, it's a 45-yard field goal. And if the Rams kick that field goal, which like most teams make that field goal these days, where do we have the Eagles? Where do we have the Eagles rated, right? And like, yeah, you
Yeah.
could do the same thing, I guess, if the Buccaneers just lost to the Jets, but through 55 minutes, like they were the much better team in that game, and their rating for them to be a 3.5 point home underdog here is that of a very average team, quite literally rated at 50 out of 100, right? So put it this way, if the Eagles are a 70 out of 100 and the Buccaneers are a 50 out of 100, what that generally translate to is a 3.5 point road favorite. And so you can either argue about the Eagles being rated that high. Maybe you want to argue that they should be rated higher. I don't know. They're 3-0, covered a point spread, covered a couple of point spreads. Not really sure if they really, quote unquote, deserve to cover either of those point spreads, but neither here nor there. Or you want to just argue that the Buccaneers are actually like a better than average team. Like I think if both of those cases or either of those cases are something that you're willing to argue, then yeah, the Buccaneers are probably a pretty good bet at +3.5. And so, I think the Buccaneers may be a little bit underrated just because of the rash of injuries that they've had. I don't know that they've won any of the games that they've won this year because of Mike Evans. He draws obviously some defensive coverage, right? Like maybe the Houston game
Mhm.
they win because Derek Stingley has to go over and cover him and can't, cover Ibuka and so on and so forth. But, again, it's another jump and hug game. You can make the case, I guess, for both teams, but certainly for the Eagles, right? Like that was a pretty big
Oh
time
yeah.
jump and hug game. So, yeah, man, I'm not going to talk you out of this thing necessarily
Everyone
because it's
except
hard for
Jalen
me to make a
Hurts.
full-blown case.
Everyone
Yeah,
except Jalen Hurts. He
that's
was
right.
not jumping and hugging. He was just
Yeah,
like,
maybe
I don't know
Dom.
how he had no
Dom was
reaction.
busy covering people's backs as the security guru that Dom is. Big Dom was probably not jumping.
You know what's
I want
funny?
to
I
see
haven't
Dom
talked much
jumping.
about Big Dom this year. I wonder what's going on.
I
Although
He's
didn't he just get
omnipresent, man. Like
fined or something? He,
he's
he
on
got
he's on screen. I'm seeing him.
okay.
He's out there.
All right. All right. Shouts
Every
to Big
time I
Dom.
think about him, I think, yeah, I shouts to Suge Knight.
All up
Yeah,
in the video.
all up in the
Well
videos.
played. Well played. Let's move on. So yes, I'm on the Bucks +3.5 there. I was like, wait, what am I doing here? The Chargers. The Chargers.
Yeah.
6-point road favorites in New York to take on the Giants. And we were just talking about the Giants. I wrote down here until Russell Wilson is completely out of the picture. I just can't. I just don't know. Like, I just don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they can come out and say that they're trying to win football games or trying to run an offense and continuously put Russell Wilson out there. It just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Just insane behavior. And the Chargers, 6 points is a lot. It's a lot to lay on the road, but the Harbaugh era, is this a different era of the Chargers where they win close games? Right? That's a thing. Yeah. Normally we're waiting on them to like blow that game and just lose in crazy fashion. Instead, they're doing the jumping and hugging on walk-off kicks, Here we are. That's Herbert's rolling. I'm going to lay the 6 points on the road, even though that's a huge ask, but I'm doing it. Chargers -6.
It is a huge ask, and it's such, listen, I always lament like the old days of the NFL, right? Where like stuff like this you could kind of see coming down the tracks and it would actually come to fruition. But for whatever reason, I guess it's like the span of coaching ability, and maybe it's the advanced analytics thing, right? Where it's like, all right, now we have more information, but there are still people like dumb enough not to buy into said information. So like Jim Harbaugh and that group and Minter and whatever, like they have an understanding of like what you're supposed to do. And you watch half of these teams in the league, and it's more than that. And you just go like, no, man, like these teams do not have a clue what to do. And therefore the things that, good teams do get augmented, and the things that bad teams do get augmented in a whatever the opposite of augmented is. Dogmented. They get dogmented.
Sure.
So
I'm with you.
Right. And so So yeah, I mean, I would like to think that the Giants are coached up to like when there's a ball on the ground to like jump on the ball and not like try to do like the scoop and score thing and get it stolen from you from Patrick Mahomes. I'd like to think through 20 years of Russell Wilson playing quarterback, like the million years that he played in college and then the, forever that he's feels like he's been in our lives in the NFL, that like he would know like in fourth down, like let's just put it anywhere in the end zone, man. Let's just give somebody a chance to do
Throw it up.
something dumb. With considering how well, and just yeah, and considering how like just delighted officials are to throw flags, that
Mhm.
like you could get a penalty here. Like I know we don't really do the thing where like the Chiefs get penalties called on them, but like it's a possibility at the very least. At least it shows me what you're
Uh,
doing.
yeah.
Anyway, all that is an absolute tangent to the point that I wanted to make, which was that the Chargers have just done 3 games to start the season that were all 3 divisional games. And, whatever you want to say about the Raiders game in Vegas, like it took something to win that game. And now they're
Yeah.
sitting here at 3-0 in the division. Denver's 0-1 in the division. They've already got a win over the Chiefs in the division, and obviously the Raiders as well. And so, like, they're sitting really, really pretty here. And so if there was a situation where like you might not be super locked in, it would be a cross country trip to face the Giants. And
Yep.
when the request here is that you win this game by a full touchdown, like that asks a lot of this team. And
Yep.
so, you got the Commanders next week back at home and like if you drop this game, like, would anybody really blame them outside of the fact that you'd be like, well, they lost to the Giants? Like, who could see that coming? Well, what if everybody on the Giants plays, I don't know, 10% better? What if everybody
Mhm.
on the Giants plays like Cam Scatabo? Right?
Right.
Let's just do some scatabooing out there, right? Everybody just try really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I think what Jackson Dart is, and you heard Chris Collinsworth talking about it on the broadcast, where he's like, "I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible," and you wouldn't say that unless the non-diplomatic version, which
Mhm.
we can say here,
Mhm.
is that like everybody wants Russell Wilson the bleep out of here, and it's been 2 games. Right? And it's like, yeah, we don't really have a better option. And it's almost like they just go, all right, man, like we signed you. Like we probably kind of made a handshake agreement that you would start week 1. We're going to take Jackson Dart along slowly because we're not really sure what we have here. And then Dart plays pretty well in the preseason. What can you take from that? Maybe not all that much, but at least Collins were saying that is telling us that like in the room in the front offices it's like yeah we're actually like really looking forward to Jackson Dart getting to sort of play here. We just kind of have to tap dance around this. And like Wilson goes for that big game against Dallas, but like Jackson Dart played a little bit in that game as it was happening. And so
Yeah.
I think like Brian Daboll and company were just as surprised as everybody else that the Cowboys were going to leave dudes wide open way down the field so that even Russell Wilson with his only thing that it's so funny people are like, well, he can throw the deep ball. And it's like everybody can throw the deep ball, right? It's just he's the only guy who that is his only trick. And
Yeah.
so when you go to Jackson Dart, you go to this thing, this entity that you have to prepare for that is different than let's just let Russell Wilson throw moonballs. And that's really all that we have to worry about because he's terrified in the pocket and he's going to
Yeah.
scramble and he's not very fast and he can't scramble. Well, like Jackson Dart is fast. He's young. He's got young legs. They put him in, but they keep doing it in a way where he's just handing the ball off. Like he hasn't really done the keep on any of those read option plays. And so, it's not rocket science. Oh, we have to defend like the read option, but it's more than what they had to defend when it was just going to be Russell Wilson. And so, listen, it might go really badly because everything for the Giants goes really badly. I'd like to see Andrew Thomas play the full game this week. Like, I get the whole pitch count thing. And it's like, well, if he's going to come back, it'd be nice to have him. But, like, you know what? Let's just play him for the first half. And that's something. It's not a coincidence that the Giants should have had the lead against the Chiefs in the first half of that game when Andrew Thomas was playing. And when they didn't, when he sat the second half just on, sort of rest or, whatever precaution, that they then couldn't really do anything on offense. Not rocket science here, folks. So
Yeah.
again, like hopefully when you get one half in, from last week and he survives it. And again, like that also kind of leads me to the idea of, conspiracy, whatever, that you just go, yeah, like they're kind of building this whole raft for when Jackson Dart is going to be the captain of that ship.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we're going to do the Andrew Thomas thing. We're going to get him to where he needs to be for week 4. Because
Yeah.
that's when we're going to go to Jackson Dart for week 4. Right? And it's just like, that's kind of odd. Now, I don't love the defensive injuries that are kind of piling up. And like, it was, dudes were kind of leaving that game last week where I was like, look what happened to I forget. It was Brian Burns. And, it was like Kayvon Thibodeau and of course, Abdul Carter. And your boy Sexy Dexy. It's like that group should get to work here against the Chargers offensive line that's like survived so far. But like you saw it last week with the Broncos. Like the Broncos were able to get to Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, by the way, is just really awesome. And
Yeah.
so, again, like the spot is brutal for the Chargers. The ask is really brutal for the Chargers after what they just did. And a loss really doesn't hurt the Chargers all that much given the stuff that they've already built here. The vibes might be high. We might be doing like a Jaxie Dimes here, like a Danny Dimes situation. I think they're actually going to play pretty well this week, the Giants are, because they do have some of the pieces that are able to stay in some of these games. And to me, it was just like a lack of interest in trusting Russell Wilson. I mean, you saw like Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson not getting like any targets in the first half of that game. It was just such a vanilla game plan. It was such a vanilla effort from Wilson. I think you're going to get whatever the opposite of vanilla is. Chocolate
It's fair.
effort. You're
No,
gonna
it's totally
chocolate
fair.
effort.
I'm just gonna
Strawberry.
let that. I'm just gonna, yeah. Napoleon. Um,
Napoleon. There you go. Rocky Road? Hopefully not.
Yeah, you've convinced me here. Pick switch to the Giants, and I think the
Let's
whole
go.
thing about this one is like Dable, like he's coaching for his job, right? So like the faster he can get Jackson Dart in and the real plays and the real whatever, right? Because we know too the Giants are one of these organizations that are run where, let's say, a deal might be done with Russell Wilson with like the owner, right? That doesn't really have much to do with what Brian Dable's plan would be or should be heading into a season. So yeah, no, you convinced me there. Pick switched. We're on the Giants +6 against the Chargers. Moving on here to our next game, which is the Browns at the Lions. Lions 9.5-point favorites here. And that's a lot of points. A lot of points. Flacco covering a big spread. You can sign me up for that, right? Browns win ugly in Green Bay, against Green Bay. And I'm pretty sure you said the Browns were live last week to win, when I feel like I wasn't really hearing that many other places other than right here from you. But hey,
you'd be surprised how many things like nobody's talking about, and they just happen to be being talked about on this podcast and over at the window. You'd be surprised.
Just
Indianapolis Colts is an example.
We'll get there. We'll get there too. Yeah. This one is a tough one, right? Because even though the Browns, not only did they cover the big spread last week, they won outright. They're in another tough spot here against the Lions, and the Lions offense looked like the Lions offense against the Ravens, but I'm still going to take the points here because I feel like the Browns defense is very, very, very good, that I like being able to cover a big spread with a good defense and a functioning quarterback. Browns have both. Give me the 9.5 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're coming off, I hate to do the situation thing, right? But you're coming short week, travel to Baltimore, big, I wouldn't call it a jump and hug game, but it's really more like an investment game, right?
Yes.
So the Lions had to invest in the idea of, we are going to run the football. And listen, you don't have to talk the Lions into running the football. You don't have to talk Dan Campbell into running the football. But they were invested in doing this, even though it didn't really work in the first, early on. They were trying to like laterally, run to one side or the other, and like Roquan Smith is just doing that. Like, was it Terminator? Like, what's the other guy in Terminator? Right? Like I
know exactly what you're talking about. I just don't know.
Just
yes, I'm with you.
Sideline to sideline, other Terminator guy. And they're like, let's actually just do the thing where we just run straight at them, and like we get the angles and we do all that kind of stuff, right? And then defensively, right, the commitment. Put it this way: if our guy exact opposite. Henry 20202020 from the Houston Texans was required to be the middle linebacker, and it's probably why the Ravens just absolutely lit up the Texans the last couple of times they've played. If he was required to break down and tackle Lamar Jackson,
Mhm.
like the Lions would have been in trouble. But the Lions did this crazy thing where their shadow, if you will, just doesn't come running like a bat out of hell at the quarterback scrambling. He
Yeah.
breaks down, squares them up, and makes a tackle over and over and over again. Do you understand the discipline that is required to do that, right? The
Yeah.
Lions were like, this is, forget about the Ben Johnson thing from week 2. This was the prove it game for the Lions to be like, yo,
Mhm.
you don't make us a 4.5 point favorite against anybody anywhere. Have you been paying attention to the Lions in the last couple of years? Oh, they lost Ben Johnson. Like, oh, they lost Aaron Glenn. Like, yeah, this team like locks in on those types of games. And when a team is not playing well, they also destroy them. The Browns are playing pretty well, man. Like, yeah, the offense, like you're still kind of like, like, but then every once in a while, like Joe Flacco just throws a laser across the middle to like Cedric Tillman or Jerry Judy or something, and you're just like,
All right.
geez, like he still got it, man. Like, and he's like a psychopath in that he's willing to stand in the pocket to the very last second, and like his arm gets hit, and the ball still ends up being like a laser. And you're
Mhm.
just like, that's crazy. Like this offense probably should be a lot better. You know, they finally kind of deployed in a meaningful way Quinshawn Judkins last week, and like he might be the best running back of the rookie class, right? And that includes Ashton Genty. Different circumstances, different scenarios. Believe me, I get that.
Mhm.
So, I'm right there with you where I go, okay, like it's one thing to game plan. I mean, you can't go any different from game planning against Lamar Jackson, where it's like seal it, everybody, seal it, like make sure you know what's going on. Well, if you're busy just kind of standing there waiting to seal something, like Joe Flacco's going to rip a pass like right by your ear hole. So, between just the idea of like Myles Garrett and company being able to get back there and do a better job than the defensive line of the Ravens did against Jared Goff, and just them being able to stuff the run better than the Ravens did. Again, because the Ravens are handicapped by the fact that one of their best players wasn't able to play, right? So
Mhm.
I think this is a little bit more low scoring. I think this is a little bit tighter than people necessarily think. It would be wild. It would be again old school NFL if we were sitting there on Sunday night going like, "Wow!" In the same week, the Lions like went to Baltimore and won, and then lost at home against the Browns. Like that would be crazy. That's the type of thing that used to happen. Again, we've talked about like coaching and like who can like who can screw stuff up and who can't. Talked about it last week, right? Your guy Stefanski. Like if
Mhm.
he is as good of a coach as we think that he is, and that he has shown, and we talk about it, like you don't hear much about the blunders that Stefanski makes. And so if you have guys out there just not making blunders, you can stay in a lot of these games. And so I think the Browns probably stay in this game.
Yeah, I like this game a lot for the Browns, and I just think sticking with that principle of if you're going to cover a big spread, do you have a defense? Do you have a functioning quarterback? And what you just said, also too, big part of that, good coach. That's not gonna they're not gonna beat themselves essentially, right? Stick around, stick around, stick around, and eventually make plays. I like that. I like that a lot. Give me the
Okay.
Browns plus the 9.5. Talking about covering big spreads here. Let's get this other big spread out of the way as the New Orleans Saints, my guy Spence, heading to Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills are favored by 16.5 points. That's a lot of points. Off principle alone, I'm on the 16.5 points. I am my guy Spence. I'll be with you, cheering you on, Spence, if you're still in the game. I don't know if you're getting benched yet, but 16.5 points just off principle. I can't lay 16.5 points in an NFL game.
Yeah,
And for the people listening to this, that's not to say that the Bills won't cover the spread. It's just saying I
totally
would
good.
not bet money on that. That's just where we're at. I'm not
Yeah, we're
laying
talking
16.5
probabilities.
points. Yeah, I'm not laying 16.5 points. This unless the only time that I can remember myself doing this
Uh-huh.
was the generational Randy Moss, Tom Brady Patriots offense when they were just throwing the deep
Sure.
ball to Randy Moss in double coverage every single week and just
Right.
dummying teams. That I think was the only time I remember myself laying like 16.5 points in a game. And that's a generational offense. And even I
Yeah.
wouldn't
So,
advise that.
so listen, I'm not going to well, I am going to throw you under the bus here because I tried to keep going back to Thursday, even though it was a joke last week. I tried to get you to switch off of the Bills last week,
Yes.
right? You'll
Oh
recall
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Yep.
Um,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, it didn't happen, but the premise of it was like the line is just a little bit too high.
Mhm.
And it would have been a rough beat if it was like 9.5, right? Like they kicked a
Yeah.
late field goal and they covered the spread. I mean, it wasn't, ever being covered at any point during the game. That would have sucked. But like when the market rates a team so high that they end up being an 11.5, 12-point favorite against a team that, like, the Dolphins are not the worst team in the league, then the number is going to get so high that it's uncomfortable. But like you need to bet on the Dolphins in that case. So they end up barely covering by the number, but also like that was a very competitive game where if it's not for Tua's touched interception, by the way, it's also not for a punt block attempt that went
Yep.
awry for the Dolphins. Maybe they do win that game. And yet, like, the market is still like, yeah, no, we're keeping the Bills like right up. And you and I talk about all the time, like our peak pinnacle of like the rating is like 80. 80 is basically like generationally awesome team. Um, so most of these kind of Super Bowl contenders kind of come in at like, between sort of 60 and 75. And so the Bills have actually pushed north of 75 from a rating perspective. Again, that's why they needed to be faded. And it's incredibly uncomfortable because you're like, oh, I have to bet against the best team in the league, the team perceived to be at the very least the best team in the league. Well, now we're at 16 and a half with the Saints. And so again, like the Bills didn't cover, so we're not going to move their market rating. We're just going to kind of keep it where it is because again, they still won by 10 points, which means how do we get to a number of 16 and a half points here for the New Orleans Saints? And as we just talked about, the high market rating is 80 for like historically great. The low is 20 for historically bad.
Yeah.
Shell, guess where the Saints are right now after losing 44-10 or whatever it was last week?
It'd be very
Yeah, buddy,
ironic if they were rated as a 16. That would just be
they
pretty funny.
they are right at 20, man. They are
Yeah.
at like as bad as you can go unless like late season when injuries kick in and you've
Mhm.
got like a hobo starting at quarterback and like I'm getting, some reps in at safety and like yeah, it's like yeah, that
Mhm.
team could probably go below 20. But like for a team that is pretty healthy, 20 is like just an insanely low number. And we saw it with the Panthers. They didn't go all the way down to 20, right? Remember Panthers last week
Yeah.
were the worst team in the league by market perception. But I'll sort of flip this in a way, well, two different ways, right? Let's use the point spread based on this rating for the Saints that
Mhm.
makes them a 16 and a half point underdog. Last week, that game against Seattle, they would have been a 10 and a half point underdog
Oof.
against Seattle.
Yeah.
Now it's easy to go, yeah, well, they lost by 3 touchdowns and they were down by like 5 touchdowns and
Yeah.
like, da 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 da. Like they should have been a 10 and a half point spread. But if you and I time machine back to last week, and
Yeah.
if we were sitting here with a Seattle minus 10 and a half, who is taking Seattle minus 10 and a half?
Not I.
Nobody, right? That's insane. All
Mhm.
right, well, that was fun. Let's go to week 5. Let's see what's going on next week. Well, the Saints are at home
Okay.
to the New York Giants. The New
Okay.
York Giants, who I just had to talk you desperately into
Mhm.
taking 6 or 6.5, by the way. I think there's some 6.5 out there. I
Ooh.
just desperately had to like talk you into that. The Giants are a road favorite next week by the look
Road
ahead
favorite.
line.
Okay.
They are a
Okay.
road favorite. The
Hmm.
Giants are a road favorite. Like you have to be rated as like the worst team by far in the league for that to be the case. And so just
Mhm.
fundamentally you go, okay, well, are the Saints the worst team in the league? The answer to that is, of course, maybe. Are the Saints historically terrible? I got to tell you, the answer to that's just no, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not
close
ready
game
to go
against the
there yet.
49ers, close game against the Cardinals. And again, we talked about the box score earlier when we were referencing the Seattle Seahawks. Close game from a box score standpoint that just kind of got out of hand due to special
Mhm.
team stuff, block punt, kick return, long touchdowns after long touchdowns in a weird scenario for the first 15 minutes of that game, which again, we were happy to take as those of us
Mhm.
on Seattle and Survivor, but it's not really a strong data point that we should be making that much of a change, right? We always talk about no matter what the score is, like you're not going to change a point spread of a game by more than a point, maybe a point and a half. we got retroactive changing of a point spread by like 4 points, because I think that got to like 6.5 in that game
Mhm.
with Seattle, the very least 7. That's a massive change. And again, like a week and a half ago, the Giants would not be road favorites. And until they beat the Chargers this weekend, they don't deserve to be road favorites. Say it with me, everybody. Against anybody. So, like, that is just telling you how low the Saints are rated here, right? So, again, it's the Bills, right? They hammer teams. They could go up and down the field on the Saints. Like, we're obviously not ruling that out. It's just, as you say, like the explanation of how we get to the point spread. I tried to do your, like, where it was, where it is, and where it should be, or whatever. I tried to do that on my own podcast this week. I absolutely blew the quote. Apologize to you in person
That's
for
fine.
that. But like, that's just the explanation, right? And
Yeah,
so, listen, man, like, I don't know that I'm necessarily looking to bet it, but
of
like, if it
course.
goes to 17, like, if somebody's out here looking to do that, like, if somebody's
Yeah,
laying the 16 and a half, like, once we start hitting like theoretical key numbers here, 17, like, yeah, I would do 17, sure.
totally fair. Totally fair. Crazy one for sure. Big boy spread. I'm gonna take the points. We keep it going to the Colts. This is. I mean, this might be labeled a big boy game as well. You got the
Right?
Colts at the Rams. Can anyone stop these Colts? They are rolling. Another big win last week. But I'm viewing this, and maybe this is me still hating on the Colts, but I'm viewing this as a weight class. The Rams, I know they
Mm,
didn't cover last week. I know they lost last week, but they were doing the thing where they were beating the defending Super Bowl champions in
yeah,
their own building, right? Like they
for
were
sure.
dominating. I know we talked about the big blocked field goal at the end of the game, but I really think
Uh-huh.
they messed up that game early on, settling for field goals early and not being able to convert some of those field goals into touchdowns early. And that kind of comes back to bite you in
Yeah.
the butt at the end, right?
Yeah.
But this game, Rams at home, favored by 3 points. I'm on the Rams here. I'll lay the flat 3 because I just think they're like it's a weight class. I think the Rams are one of the better teams in the entire NFL, where I think the Colts are a good team, good upstart. They're playing well. This might just be too much of an ask here to go up against a Rams team that is legit, legit. That's what my takeaway from last week, removing the emotions of how the game ended.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And for me, that removing emotions of like the flag that I planted on the Colts at the start of the season,
Mhm.
where you go, okay, like I guess you're just betting on the Colts like every week then. It's like, well, no, like I've made my position before the season that
Yeah.
like plus 400 for the Colts to win the division was a cuckoo number because I think this team can win 10 games. My position also, like literally, I was describing it as like they can lose a bunch of games, still win 10 games, and win the crappy AFC South in the
Yeah.
same way that the Texans did that last year. Like the Texans had a 10-7 record last year. I'm like, the Colts can do that. They were like 8-9 last year and lost 2 close games to the Texans, right? So that's like the basis for it, beyond the idea of just understanding that Daniel Jones is going to be good. Not going to be
Yeah.
amazing. He's not going to carry him because I also think Jonathan Taylor's awesome. That's why I've got Jonathan Taylor rushing title and Offensive Player of the Year futures. 3 weeks in, guess who's the favorite for Offensive Player of the Year? Jonathan Taylor.
Hey.
I say all, and he was 50-1. So I say that to say, like, I've got my positions on the Colts. And, like, I guess I would be bummed out if we go to this, as you say, like bigger, heavier weight class, and they, are don't win, they don't cover, whatever. But I have to look at this game from a singular perspective. And if you can get -3 on the Rams here, you have to take it because, again, as much as I think the Colts are a 10-7, maybe even 11-6, again, depending on sort of how the cookie crumbles here, the market already is there, right? The market caught up to me in 3 weeks. And so, like, that's cool, makes me feel nice, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, from a value perspective, listen, I said this last week because we took the Titans against the Colts. The Titans are god awful, and their coach has no idea what he's doing.
Oof.
Sean McVay is not, that dude, right? Sean
Yeah.
McVay is that dude, as they say.
Mhm.
So, like, yeah, I
Mhm.
think this is a tough one for the Colts here. I think you're going to get sort of the full energy, full effort out of the Rams. I'm delighted the Colts are 3-0 from like a conceptual standpoint, even though it's cost me a couple of games here. the last couple of weeks. Again, they probably shouldn't have beaten the Broncos there. Talked about that whole fiasco with regards to the field goal at the end of the game. But you have to get lucky here and there, right? So again, this is the tough, second road game, back-to-back road game, a way tougher opponent. Matthew Stafford, hopefully, knock on wood, because he did throw an interception immediately against the Eagles. Basically, actually, at the exact same time that Cam Ward was throwing a very Will Levis-y interception against the Colts last week. I don't think that's going to happen to give the Colts an early lead necessarily. Again, knock on wood. I think this is the right side here. I think the favorite with the Rams is the play because, again, I think they are. I think they are a Super Bowl contender. Well, as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy, I think the Colts are division winner, make the playoffs. Again, have an interesting home game, depending on who they play. Maybe they wouldn't even be favored. Who knows? But the market is reacting to the Colts. The market is buying into the Colts in both point spread rating, division odds, Jonathan Taylor to win Offensive Player of the Year, like all of these things. Like they are being addressed, right? They are not under the radar because unfortunately, again, I'm hearkening back to the NFL seasons of old. We're just kind of too smart about this stuff, right? Like we react to we know too much at this point. Can't get away with it for longer than a week and a half.
I'm going to sidetrack here for a sec, but I don't really care because I think it's just a funny story. But Zaire Franklin, I know I talked to you a lot about the Joe Budden podcast and I listened to it. For some reason, Zaire Franklin is boys with Joe Budden and always will randomly call into their podcast. And they'll like have him on the mic and he's always like chirping them because they're Giants fans. I think there's a Cowboys fan on their pod as well. But from the start of the season, it was pretty funny because they kept asking him. They're like, yo, you got Danny Dimes now? Really? You guys are rolling with Danny Dimes and you think that's going to go well? And he's been saying from the start, he's like, just wait, man. Just wait. We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. And like last week he called in and he's like, I tried to tell you guys. You guys didn't want to listen to me though. I tried to tell you guys, just wait. Yeah. And they're so salty because they're Giants fans, right? And they're like, what's going on? Of course. It's so funny. And Zaire's a beast.
No, and some of this stuff is, and it's cool that he says that, ahead of time, right? Because a lot of the times you hear like a Diana Rossini talking. It's like, oh yeah, I had this conversation with like Saquon Barkley, and like he was telling me like how good Daniel Jones is. He's like, what? And it's like, yeah, man, like no, he's good. And he's going to be good with the Colts. And it's like, okay, well, that's a cool story to tell me like 2 weeks into the season or 3 weeks into the season. Would have preferred that earlier on. I had to go and, kind of suss that out on my own. Would have been nice to hear from Saquon before I had to go and do the work myself. That would have made life easier. But like, that's the type of stuff, man. Like that's good stuff. And that's reason to listen to some of these things because you get like little nuggets on like, kind of a game recognized game. Like, guys know on the field. Everybody, nobody knows more about what's going on the field. Again, we can go back to the Giants thing. The other 10 guys on the Giants offense know what's going on with their quarterback. All right.
No, it's just super interesting from the standpoint, exactly what you're talking about. Hearing fans, Giants fans being like, you guys got Danny Dimes, and him being like, I don't know, just wait. Like it was just so funny. And to have him come back and troll. Yes, that's my sidebar for the week. And I will now move on to our next game, which is the San Francisco 49ers. Also, I'm straight lying. I sidebar like way too much to pretend as if that's going to be the first and the only one of this pod.
But the two of us, like, you're not going to believe this. We're doing a tangent. Like, well, no, you do that all the time.
Niners are 3-point favorites at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I feel like the Jags kind of just play the same game every week. Like they're just mediocre. They're scoring about like 15-ish points. And like they got a chance to do some stuff, and then there's like a fumble or just like a drop pass or just something wacky going on. But I feel like they're playing the same, and it's more dependent on what's going on with the other team, whether they win or lose. For sure. If that makes sense.
For sure.
The flip side, though, the Niners and Mac Jones, I can't lie to you. That last drive, I was just hype. Mac Jones was just in the pocket and just letting her rip on that last drive. And Shanahan's calling the A++ plays on that last drive to get in the field goal range. It's a thing to watch. Brock Purdy might be back. I don't even know how I really feel about that, but we'll see. I'm going to lay the 3 points with the Niners here, more so because I think the Niners offense, as they figure things out more, and, Ricky Pearsall continues to get more comfortable in the offense, and McCaffrey, knock on wood, is still healthy, and they're using him more as a receiver because they don't have Kittle yet. And You know, there's a lot going on with the Niners. No Bosa.
Sure.
Okay, cool. They got some depth on the defensive line, and you can't replace Bosa with one guy, but I don't think they're just going to fall off the
No.
mat because Bosa's gone. It's tough. 3 points, the flat three. I'll lay it. My guy Pinero, he's confident. He's doing the Dwayne Wade,
Oh
this is
boy.
my house, after he hit the winning field goal, which I was like, I don't know about that, my dude, but
Yeah.
I'll let you shine. I'll let you shine. Give me the Niners
Yeah.
laying the 3 points.
Well, I mean, you guys are so just desperate for somebody to make a field goal. You're like, I don't care. I'll sign over the deed. Sign over the
Yeah,
deed to
celebrate however you
Levi's
want, my
Stadium. I think
dude.
it's what it's still called. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Put your jeans on, man. Like, feel it. Um, I think I like the Jags in this game.
No, that's totally fine. I get it. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you talk about like the Jags. Like, they all play pretty much the same games because they're just a dead nuts average team. They're an average football team.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
would be nice for the Jags if like their best offensive player, Brian Thomas, caught more than like a ball a game.
Mhm.
Maybe catching one for a pretty significant gain that set up the touchdown. By the way, the Texans last week letting the Jags score. You had two
Yeah.
timeouts. I
Yes. Yes. Yes.
don't
Yes.
think
Yes.
that was the circumstance for that. Like, you call the two timeouts, and you force them to make a play on third down. You force them to kick a field goal. Then you only need a field goal to tie the game. Anyway, again, these are coaches.
Coaching.
They
So
don't really
strange to me.
know what they're doing, right? So speaking of coaching, right? Like, listen, it wasn't an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, it
No.
would help if Brian Thomas. I slammed the Jags last week about like the whole Travis Hunter thing. It didn't end up betting a side in that game. I had the under in that game, and it was delightful because,
Mhm.
again, both those offenses are relatively shook. But honestly, I'd have to say the same thing about the San Francisco 49ers offense. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like Brock Purdy comes back potentially. I don't have the 49. Again, we've talked about it, and we're probably going to talk about it every week for the rest of the season. The preseason rating of the 49ers was reflective of their win total. Their win
Mhm.
total was reflected of the easy schedule that they have. We are sitting here, and the 49ers haven't been wildly impressive. They are 3-0,
Yeah.
right? So like they're en route to, like, even if they went 500 the rest of the way, right? They'd be sitting at 10-7. Even give them one more game than a win the rest of the way, and they end up at 11-6. Well,
Yeah.
that's pretty much where their rating was before the season starts. And I think you'd agree, like, we still might not know or think that the 49ers are really all that great. And part of it isn't their fault, right? They obviously been without Purdy for 2 games. Kittle injured. Now it's Nick Bosa. Like, who's their next best player? Is it Fred Warner? Is it Trent Williams? Like, one of those guys apparently just has to get injured next week because that's just what the deal is in San Francisco. I'm not putting that on them. Don't want that to happen. But like, my point is like, I don't
Yeah.
know where we're supposed to put the 49ers rating, except every week the rating is just kind of correct because the game that they play is basically within a point or two, as you know, of what the
Mhm.
point spread actually is, right? Where
Yeah.
they get downgraded so low that they end up covering against or should say, yeah, they end up covering against the Saints. And then last week, it's just too high. We talked about the readjustment, and now you're just not covering, right? Like, the market's got it figured out. And so I can't really move them any higher than where I have them. The Jags, I think that there's at least a path for them to sort of slowly improve. I never really
Yeah.
understood the idea of like Liam Cohen going to take over and everything's going to be like awesome. And it's still like not awesome by any stretch of the imagination here. My concern, if Purdy's back, he is more of a turnover machine than Mac Jones. And when you start kind of turning the ball over, you leave open the possibility for things to get particularly weird. And so I also kind of look, this is sort of a weird way of looking at it, right? I look at the Cardinals, as we talked about in the Thursday night game, getting mega downgraded after that game. And
Mhm.
it's like, wow, if you're going to take that personally, that the 49ers beat the Cardinals,
I see what
right?
you're
Because that's
saying.
kind of the only reason not to. It's like, oh man, you lost to the 49ers. Like, you can't be favored at home against the Seahawks. It's like, well, that's kind of a harsh reaction and kind of insulting to the 49ers. Well,
Mhm.
then why are the 49ers still being rated as an above average team if it's such a catastrophe that the Cardinals lost to them last week in San Francisco? So, yeah, if we're getting this full three here, I'll take the 3 points with the Jaguars, and I'm hoping that the Nick Bosa injury. Listen, it happened. That sucks. I've got Michael Williams Defensive Rookie of the Year tickets. I'm hoping he does some good stuff. It does make life easier for Trevor Lawrence when he drops back to
Yep.
pass, when he doesn't have the same dudes that, you remember years past, right? When the 49ers would go to Jacksonville and just absolutely torture chamber Trevor Lawrence. It's like, well, none of those guys are around
Yeah.
anymore. And so when he gets out in the field and looks around and like, oh, I don't know any of these dudes from like a pass rushing perspective, like that's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit more comforting, I think. So I think the 49ers are in for another dogfight. It's probably going to come down to a pointer here. Maybe there's a safety, maybe there's a 2-point conversion, whatever, to get things all kind of weird and off the number. But I just rather have the 3 points than be asking the 49ers to win by 4.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Totally understand it. I mean, I
Riding with
think
your
you can tell
guys.
by listening to me, I'm rolling with the vibes of my Niners right now. And
You're riding with your
if I'm
guys.
but also being real for a second, I think the
Right.
big part of this team is you got to take the wins right now when you can, because the downturn is
Bank
coming.
them.
Yeah, you're just banking wins,
Bank them.
banking good plays, banking the good juju, so to speak. Let that roll.
Yep.
Our next game, though, we got the Panthers on the road in New England. Patriots 5.5-point favorites, and that's a lot of points for the Patriots to be favored by. I'm going to lay the points with the Pats. I think last week, bad fumbles, like right on the goal line, completely just flipped the game last week. Insane performance. They
Yeah.
should have won comfortably, and instead they just lose outright. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
You think that
Yeah.
Vrabel will tighten some of that stuff up. Hopefully they go to Travian Henderson at running back. You would hope, can we get some reps for the guy that we were told was going to be the guy this year?
Yeah, no
if the guy
doubt.
ahead of him's fumbling like crazy, what are we doing here? I don't know. I'm also not just going to be fooled about the Panthers last week at home. We know that as bad of a team as the Panthers are, they're always better at home than they are on the road. And also that had a lot to do with Michael Penix doing a lot of Penixing last week.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately am going to lay the points with the New England Patriots here, which is a big number for the Pats to lay. But we're sitting in the Vegas zone. I think the Pats win comfortably here.
Yeah, it's that again. I'm gonna keep going back to it, right? Like, oh, in my day, like this is how things worked. You just look at a box score and you go, okay, well, the scoreboard says 30-0. The box score says something quite different, right? And so you get defensive touchdowns, like we talked about in like the Seattle game, right? You get special teams touchdowns, turnovers, all of those sorts of things. By the way, like amazingly, the Falcons go and Parker Romo takes over for Younghoe Koo after Younghoe Koo misses the game winner in game 1, and then Parker's good in the first game, and then he plays, and then he comes out and he misses 2 field goals, right? So you're looking at this game that it was 10-0 at halftime that already had 2 field goals missed from Parker Romo. And then you go into the box score and you go, okay, Falcons 332 total yards. Carolina Panthers 224.
Insane.
The Falcons had 90 more yards. And they lost 30-0. Like,
that's hard to do.
No, that's really hard to do. Like, I don't know what other way you could go about saying something is a fluke than via that. But you go, well, 3 turnovers, let's start there, and a defensive/special teams touchdown for the Panthers. So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's the way to overcome that. But it's also not like, well, here come the Panthers. Like, now it's about to get cooking here. You mentioned like the home road thing. I'm like, I don't really care where this game is being played. I don't think the Panthers are very good off of like just looking at that box score. And then of course you go over to the New England box score and it's like the reversal. And listen, we talked about it. All we have to talk about is 5-1 turnover margin before we even, as mentioned already, two like things that were going to be touchdowns that became touchbacks in, the fumble and the interception in the end zone. And so, again, this should be a 2 ships passing in the night. I don't even know if that's the right reference. It's like one team that we should be like, imagine selling high on the concept of the Panthers. But we also should be buying low on the Patriots. It's infuriating as it was watching them go up and down the field and then just drop the ball. Like Drake May just doing some dumb stuff. And like you said, man, like if Mike Vrabel's half the coach that we think he is, these guys are walking around like they're college kids with college coach telling him to like carry a football around campus all week and telling the student body to try to like strip them of that football. Like if you want to be treated like kids, play like a kid. And so like that's what they were doing. They were playing like kids last week. So I
Yeah.
think he's going to have their attention here. 5.5 feels like a lot. I understand that because you're looking at it going like, what? The Panthers just won and the Patriots just lost. And it's like, all right, well, like why isn't the line been bet to in down to 3?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like people who know how to read a box score are looking at this going like, actually, the Patriots just don't bleep it up in unbelievable ways. They beat the Steelers comfortably. And by the way, we're also, it's kind of like the 49ers thing. We're seeing the Steelers getting no sort of credit for the win
Yes.
in the line with that in the Vikings game, right? Because it's not just all about the Vikings winning that game last week. Part of it is like, like cool about the win Steelers, but like we're not going to give you a massive upgrade. In fact, we're actually kind of giving you a bit of a downgrade here. It's
Mhm.
kind of like, yeah, like you won that game, but like we weren't impressed by it. Like you weren't the better team. You can
Yeah.
win a game and be downgraded in the market by sharp bettors, right? We do that all the time. And so I just think that's kind of the case here where like, yeah, if you want to put the Panthers back up, like I get that, but like I don't think that the Patriots need to be like mega downgraded in this instance. Now, am I dying to like trust the Patriots to the point of like using them in Survivor? No, but like for one singular bet, for a 5.5 point spread, anything under 6 here, like yeah, I'll take the Patriots. I expect them to play their best game of the season this week.
Yeah, it'd be super interesting game there for sure with the Pats, just seeing how they bounce back from just a terrible, terrible performance. It'll be kind of a show me game to see what Vrabel's all about as I look forward to that one. We move on though.
Mhm.
Titans and Texans. Texans 7-point home favorites. With that, Texans offense struggling to put up points, to be laying 7
Yeah,
points is a lot. The flip side, though, is that I feel like I've been taking the Titans and
yeah,
having bad results week in and week out, relying on the Titans doing anything. But I'm going to take the
yeah.
points here with the Titans at +7, just because, the offensive struggles of the Texans. I don't know. I know I alluded to it a couple weeks ago. And the thing that I was tiptoeing around was just involve the name Amber Rose. If you're unfamiliar with who Amber Rose is, a quick
Whoa.
Google and you'll understand that since the links to your man CJ Stroud, I don't know. The timelines just sort of seem like, speaking of two
Oof.
ships passing in the night,
Whoa.
we've seen a
Whoa.
different CJ Stroud. We'll just say that. Anyways, why does the Texans offense
Yeah.
continue to struggle? That's my question here. How are they laying 7 points against anybody? And I know Tennessee is hovering on that line
Yeah.
of being
Yeah,
anybody.
that's
They're
it.
hovering. There's a major
That's
hovering
it.
here. I don't know. Like, I need you to talk me into the Texans here if I'm going to flip this game.
Okay, well, so the betting market has acknowledged that the Texans aren't particularly good or have not been particularly good, right? They have bumped them from a point where they were considered above average team to now they are considered a below average team. Okay, so the market has
Okay.
done that. They were like, yes, that is the address that we have put on the Texans. I would quickly just kind of remind everybody they are driving late to potentially beat the Rams in LA in week 1.
Mhm.
They are Henry Tuotuotuo's breaking down and tackling Baker Mayfield on 4th and 10
Yep.
away from beating Tampa Bay in that game. And then last week, listen, it's a 7 point, it's a one possession game. We talked about the idea of D'Amico Ryans letting them score. Not my favorite move, an going under the radar Dumbo move. But again,
Yeah.
that's a close game, divisional on the road. Meanwhile, the Titans, well, just to finally put a wrap on the Texans thing, I expect the Titans, they've already cut CJ Gardner Johnson. So there's an element of
Yeah.
accountability at that point, right? Where you bring
Mhm.
in a veteran, you go, you're not playing the way that we want you to play, you're cut. That
Yeah.
sends a message to everybody else in the room, right? So
Mhm.
everybody else, lock
Facts.
it up, right? Like we're 0-3 here. We got to win this game, otherwise the season is in the trash.
The kitchen sink
Um,
game.
and they haven't played yet, and they haven't played the Colts yet. So at least in the back of your mind, you're going, well, the Colts aren't even favored this week. They could lose that game. They could be 3-1. We could be and should be 1-3, and we still have 2 games to play against the Colts, right? So like
Mhm.
As Chris Berman used to say about Seattle, come on, Houston. Here, like this is it. As for the Titans, my question to you would be, as we just talked about the Saints getting like bum rushed down the ratings to
Yeah.
20 out of 100,
Yeah.
what did the Titans do to deserve not getting that treatment?
It's fair.
Why aren't they at 20 out of 100? This team's terrible. You're hearing like Michael Pittman, I think it was the one who's saying it. He was like, yo, man, like we came into that game, like those guys didn't want anything to do with playing. Like we knew they didn't feel like playing.
That's crazy.
Dog, it is week 3. How are we already at don't feel like playing unless you have no respect for your head coach?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Cam Ward and you throw that first pass that gets in the flat where you're throwing the ball without looking because my guy was standing right there. The defender was standing right there. Like you don't give a bleep about like what you're doing because you don't have any respect for the head coach because that guy doesn't know what he's doing. There was a sequence, this is relatively highly publicized, but just in case anybody missed it, there was a sequence where the Colts took a timeout, the Titans took a timeout,
Yes.
and they still couldn't get the kickoff for a field goal attempt on a 4th and 1 that you shouldn't even be kicking a field goal on. And that then turned around and gave the Colts, because they then tried to kick from even further away. It was like, here's a 65-yarder. It's like, there's 45 seconds left in the half, man. Like you could not be doing this any worse. And of course he misses the kick, and then the Colts get the ball in basically field goal range, at least 20-25 field goal range, which is like as soon as you step on the field. And of course the defense is so bad that the Colts just march down the field and score a touchdown. And like at that point, any sort of semblance or idea of a backdoor cover for the Titans was gone. This is a week after the second half. If you want to start pointing fingers, they just flat out quit against the Rams, right? They had the lead in the second half and they gave up in the fourth quarter. This team has no respect for their head coach, and honestly, they shouldn't, because this guy's a disaster. Every time you look over, and and even his explanation at halftime, he's blaming the kicking guy, the K-ball guy. You know, the guy who's got like an irrational like amount of gloving happening because he's got the pouch of footballs and he's got the K-ball for when there's kicks. Like they blamed that dude for not getting that field goal off. Like I've never even seen, like we don't even see the K-ball guy, who by the way travels with the team for every game. What is that guy getting paid? What an incredible job that is. Like how much fun weekend job is that for 17 weeks of the season, especially with the Titans, because you know you're not going to have to worry about an 18th or 19th week of the season. Anyway, my point is like you can say to me, yo, man, like 7's a lot for the Texans. At least I know that there's accountability in the locker room, right? That's what DeMeco Ryans, even if I'm not loving the decision making he's rocking, at least there's accountability because he's like, yo, if you're not running our defense the way that we want to run it, like you're out. I would have loved to seen them, fire Henry To'oTo'o, but like, whatever. I guess they don't have an adequate replacement for him, because it's like, you're also not going to like fire Derek Stingley because that guy's awesome. Speaking of which, right? Like one of their better weapons on the Titans, Calvin Ridley, will not be catching any passes this week because Derek Stingley's got that on lockdown. So, I just look at it and I go like, yeah, man, we can do the thing where we're like, well, that's too many for a Texans team that's 0-3, but a couple of games here or there, and they could very well be 3-0, and we could be having a completely different conversation. And if we were rating the Titans as we rate the Saints, which again, like it's easy to say, well, Saints are the worst team in the league. Why aren't the Titans the worst team in the league? If the Titans are the worst team in the league, then this line should be 9. So like maybe there's value here on the Texans.
Yeah, I also think too exactly what you're saying about accountability on the defense. The defense is the one unit between these two teams that at least you can say, I know the Texans defense is good. I don't know what is good about the Titans, but I know a lot is bad about the Titans. And your coach not being able to understand to get a play in, and his explanation made it even worse. Like there's times where you can go up there and just lie in the press conference. It's okay. Do not go up there and admit, I'm just having trouble deciding whether we go for it or kick the field goal. It's like, what? Like, how's that possible? Why'd you take a timeout? Like, I just don't, like, it didn't make sense. Anyways, the pick has been switched.
Failure.
Houston -7. This is an organizational pick in terms of the institution of the Texans being better than the institution of the Titans right now. That's what I'm doing. That's
Yeah,
where the
that's
pick's
fair.
being flipped.
Yeah, that's fair.
Great discussion by you. Great flip. Great flip. I like it. I like it. Oh,
Great
I got
flip.
to add that to my notes. That pick has been
Biggest
flipped.
flip.
You know, it's a flip. That's a flip. We will continue on with the Commanders as 1.5 favorites in ATL, taking on the Falcons. Marcus Mariota stepped in, did the job last week against Vegas for the Commanders. Still no word yet on Jaden Daniels, but I feel like this line kind of tells me that he's not in. I would assume this line would be the Marcus Mariota line. No, I don't know. We'll discuss. We'll discuss.
We'll discuss.
Atlanta on the road, though, did not look good last week at all. Michael Penix just not doing the job at all. But now they're back at home, and I think this is a team that when they're on their home field, their turf, maybe their offense will hopefully look a bit better. I'm on the Falcons here in this one, but obviously before making any wager on this game, you should know whether or not Jaden Daniels is in the lineup or not.
Yeah, that's certainly ideal. I expect him to play.
Okay.
You'll recall.
So this is Jaden Daniels' line, you think?
Well, let's put it this way. Last week we talked about the idea of the Commanders being the bet that you need to make because not that there's not a difference between Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota. It's just not going to be in a singular game reflected. It's going to be reflected too much in the point spread. Right. And so the Commanders line comes, against the Raiders. And it's like the Commanders line comes down to 3 in that game. You can even grab some -2.5 for a little bit of juice on that. And so this line that is now 1.5, I believe, right? It opened 2.5. So you can see there's already some interest in Atlanta. But this line or this rating of the Commanders would put that number last week back to 5.5. Okay. So you tell me, right? Like, is that 5.5 the appropriate Marcus Mariota in hindsight line? Or is that 5.5 the Jaden Daniels line? Now, I would also say that the look ahead line to that game, so 2 weeks in arrears, was 7.5. That was probably too high. We saw the Commanders lose to the Packers, so it's probably going to kind of reopen around 7. So that's what I mean. Like, it's, if the last week's line is now 5.5 against the Raiders, maybe 7 was the number that it was going to be with Jaden Daniels. We've tightened the difference between Marcus Mariota and Jaden Daniels to essentially 1.5, touching a key number. So from our rating perspective, if we had the Commanders as a 57 out of 100 to start the season, and when Jaden Daniels got announced out, they went below 50. They went into like that 47 type of a range. They are back to 53. So it's tightened back up again, right? So if you saw that Jaden Daniels comes back, if my expectation is that Jaden Daniels is going to come back and play this week, I could see the Commanders' rating go up back to 56 or 57. This number go back to 2.5, maybe even 3, at which point the Falcons obviously become more attractive. Now, the Falcons just lost, as you've heard, 30-0 to the Carolina Panthers. So what do you think's happened to their rating? Not great, Bob, right? So, they're up and down. Like we talked about the 49ers being like right where the point spread is every week. Well, we got the Falcons out here, beating the Vikings on the road, right? Pretty comfortably. And now they've got them losing 30-0 to the Panthers. They are nowhere near the point spread on either game, right? Like the dog is basically going to work whenever the Falcons play. So, their rating is obviously taken a hit because you don't lose to the Panthers and then don't take a rating hit. But we just looked at the box score. And so if we're going to trash the Panthers for winning that game 30-0 because their box score was mid, then we got to kind of go, well, it wasn't so bad for the Falcons. And so, I don't know that they're a 42 out of 100, because if we came in here and talked about that last week, let's put it this way. If I came here before last week's game and I said the Falcons are a 42, you'd be like, what? I just watched them beat the Vikings on the road. And then I also said, well, they're also going to outgain the Panthers by 90 yards this week. You'd be like, yeah, all right. Like, that makes more sense than them being a 42. I would
Mhm.
then have to break the news to you that they lost by 30 points, and you'd be like, wow, okay, I don't really know how that happened. And like as we said, it's like, yeah, it was kind of crazy. So again, I think
Yeah.
the Falcons are kind of underrated here. So they are going to be the bet. It's just that if I think that Jaden Daniels is going to play, I think there's room for this point spread to move up, at which point I could be getting +3 with the Falcons when Jaden Daniels plays. That would be cool. Anything with Jaden Daniels not playing at +1.5, even pick them if it kind of drifts back towards the Falcons. I think the Falcons win this game regardless of who plays at quarterback, but I certainly want 3 if it's Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, no, that sounds good for sure. And a great breakdown there on the, if he's in, if he's not in, and understanding what that could mean to the line, which is what I love about this podcast, if I do say so
Thanks,
myself.
buddy.
We move on to the Bears, who are 1.5 favorites. Shout to this 1.5 lines. These are starting to really annoy me. But 1.5 favorites are the Bears in Vegas taking on the Raiders. Raiders got blown out, as we just mentioned. Now they head home. The Bears look like, I mentioned the Brady, Randy Moss offense of the Patriots. That's what the Bears kind of looked like last week against the Cowboys. That's how bad the Cowboys
Yeah.
defense is. But story
Mm-hmm.
for that game. We'll get to the Dallas Cowboys and their defense. But the Bears, can they continue to play well against the Raiders, who their defense has looked kind of shaky at moments? I don't know what to make here. I'm trying not to overreact to the
Mm-hmm.
Bears' performance last week, but at the same
Yeah.
time, the Raiders' operation, I mean, some good vibes early. Vibes
Yeah.
are not high right now. I'm on the Bears
It's not
here at
Apex
minus
vibes.
1.5.
Um, Okay, so the Raiders thing, and again, we just talked about the Commanders, so it's kind of perfect, right? And the idea of like Marcus Mariota, like he runs the same plays that Jaden Daniels does. He's not going to do them as well. He's not going to be as
Mhm.
explosive. He's not going to be as terrifying. You're not going to be as worried. And then Marcus Mariota just pops off like a 25-yard run, and you're like, you know what? We should have worked harder on preparing for that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so, meanwhile, the Commanders get a punt return touchdown in that game.
Mhm.
They get a third string running back who like looks like he's tackled, but then like bursts free for like a
Yeah.
60-yard touchdown in that game. And lo and behold, they win by 2 touchdowns, right? So you go, okay, well, are we relying on those two things on a week to week basis? On a positive note for the Commanders, are we on a negative note for the Raiders, are we going, are you guys going to give that up every single week? Right. And I
Mhm.
don't think that's the case. So it's easy to look at the Raiders and be like, man, they got blown out last week. And then obviously the Geno Smith Monday night thing against the Chargers was a bit of a fiasco. I can't tell you what amount of a difference there is between the Chargers defense and the Bears. I can't
Yeah.
reach wide enough on the screen that I'm on with my hands so that it is fully encapsulated because it's just not that big. It's just I can't do it. Point is, it's like the Bears like don't. I think there might just be a scenario where we spend the entire season watching Cowboys games and then overrating the team that they just played the very next week because it was so comically easy for them to score particularly long touchdowns, which like in the NFL like don't really happen that often. All defenses are based on the idea of just get a team to the red zone, force them into a field goal. Right? Like the
Yeah.
explosive plays are the death now in the NFL. And the Raiders gave up 2 pretty random explosive plays. When they're not giving up random explosive plays, 20 points at home against the Chargers honestly isn't really that bad of a number. And if you
Yeah.
can only give up 30 points to the Chargers, or you can hold the Chargers to 20 points, excuse me, I think you can do that against the Bears, but everybody's a little bit scared of the Bears offense all of a sudden. But it's like you just played the Cowboys. Like it could not have gone better. So I think this is a perfect spot to take the Raiders here. I think Geno Smith, who again is one of the more accurate quarterback and is willing to throw the deep ball. I think he's going to get one of those Geno games where if you just looked at Geno and you're like, he's going to play 10 good games and 7 bad games, the 7 bad games are going to be really grim. The 10 good games are going to be really fun. And he's going to have a quote after about, hanging up or calling back or whatever the hell it was. I think this is one of those where the Raiders play actually a really good game and are able to take advantage of the Bears offense. Should say the Bears defense, and offensively, I don't think the Bears are going to be able to have such an easy time of it as they did against the Cowboys.
Yeah. That whole like facing the Cowboys and having everything just flip. It's like, oh yeah, you want to have your
Secondary's bad. pass rush doesn't exist. Like the Raiders have a pass rush. Max Crosby's going to be getting in that backfield.
Sure. And we know that the problem for Mr. Williams, Caleb, is anytime there's a pass rush, he gets off
Yeah.
script, he gets thrown off schedule, and that's a problem
Yeah.
for him. So pick has been switched. Pick has been
Switcher.
switched. Pick has been
Let's
switched
go.
to
Okay.
the Vegas Raiders. I don't know why. Oh, there we go. Control room issues.
True.
Yeah. Pick switched. Moving on. Sunday Night Football.
Please.
Packers 7-point road favorites against the Cowboys. No CD Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys, and that changes their offense drastically. You mentioned last week, it was so funny because we were talking about last week when we talked about the Cowboys, and you said, I made the comment about them having 2 number ones. And you were like, well, Pickens, and then we saw that. And we saw why Pickens is Pickens and not necessarily should be classified as a number one. I thought that was really funny going back to our conversation last week. The Cowboys defense is just so brutal. And I think this is just a perfect bounce back spot for the Packers. And, if your offense looked kind of grim against Myles Garrett and company and the Browns, you know what a good remedy for that is? The Cowboys defense next week. And that's before we mention Micah and whatever circus that'll be between Jerry and Micah and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I'm going to lay the 7 points here with the Packers on the road. You don't really like to lay that many points on the road, but when you do, it's going to be with a good team. And the Packers are a good team. And if you do, you want it to be against a bad team. And I think the Cowboys, they're teetering.
Yeah. They're tottered at this point. Listen, it's Cowboys at home in prime time. You're like, oh, that's scary. No, that's not scary at all, right? Like Cowboys lose and big all the time at home. And again, if it wasn't the Giants, they probably would have lost that game and maybe even lost it big. Put it this way. The only reason that Matthew Golden's not going to have an 80-yard touchdown is because they've changed the rules to the kickoff and the Packers are going to start on the 35. Like, that's basically it. So, feel free to get your Matthew Golden props in. My guy, Speedster, out of Texas, might be in the game plan for a long pass or two, and has been so close the last few weeks and then got over his receiving number this past week against Cleveland, which, again, way more difficult. We might have a 100-yard receiving yard prop type situation, maybe a same game parlay for Matthew Golden. Basically, Matthew Golden. That's what the takeaway is from this. He is going to have a big game here. He's going to have Chris Collinsworth being like, Mike, this guy was just unbelievable in the combine. Just one of the fastest people you've ever seen in your life.
Can't wait. Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a fun matchup. That is definitely going to be a fun matchup, Cowboys, Packers, just because so many storylines, so many angles there to talk about. I'm already disgusted at all the Jerry Jones ISOs we're going to see. Is Jerry going to be on the field trying to talk to Micah before the game? Like, I can already see it now, and I'm already tired of it. We'll go to Monday Night Football because there's 2 Monday Night Football games. First one here, Jets at the Dolphins. The Dolphins are 3-point home favorites. I feel like I don't know if I can take the Dolphins as 3-point favorites against anybody. I know they played well the last time we saw them, which was a while ago. So they're on. This isn't a bye week for them, but this is a long week of them getting to, tighten some things up here. But I'm on the Jets plus the points just because I'm doing this whole divisional matchup thing here. And I'm just going to take the points with 2 teams that I don't really think are that good. But, I could be talked into it because if we are to see the best version of the Dolphins, it would be here, right? Other than their bye week, right?
Yeah.
He's thinking.
Yeah, sorry.
Or you're checking the line.
I was just sort of paralyzed, but I just want to make sure that we can get the +3 with the Jets because yes, it's available -118, so you do have to pay a little bit more. I had written in my notes -2.5, and I was just looking at the adjustment because it's like, all right, how do we get to 3 with the Dolphins here, right? And it's back to kind of where their rating was before the Bills. And they were like giving themselves credit for playing a close game with the Bills. And like, yeah, you should. But it's just
Yeah.
kind of sad that it was like, everybody like tried really hard. I was really proud of how like Mike
Participation
McDaniel like got
medal.
everybody like rallied, right? It's just like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. Um, Normally you go, okay, well, the Dolphins have this home field advantage because it's in Miami and it's super hot. Jets just played last week in Tampa Bay. During the day,
Yeah.
peak sort of heat. Now it's very next week they get to play at night. I'm with you here. I would just like a little bit of a price. Again, going back to the pricing thing
Of
when it
course.
comes to the Jets at +3. Are we getting? We are getting more Tyrod, or are we not getting more Tyrod? That was the other thing that was sort of a question mark.
Yeah, that's
Based
still a
off of
question
last
mark.
week, though,
Mhm.
like you saw it with the point spread, like it did not move when Taylor was or
Yeah.
Fields was announced out and Taylor was announced in. So like I guess that doesn't matter. But if we're going off the starting point of Tyrod Taylor and it just happens to be Justin Fields and the market's not going to change, like I prefer Justin Fields than Tyrod
Yeah.
Taylor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it would be a bonus if he comes back. So yeah, give me the +3 here with the Jets as well. At least
Yeah.
as a starting point between now and
For
Monday.
sure. And obviously, there's lots of time here, as mentioned, and lots of information to still come out in terms of who's in and who's out. And quarterback's a pretty important position. We
Yeah,
move
man.
on, though, to the Bengals, second Monday nighter. The Bengals at the Broncos. Broncos, 7.5-point favorites. That's a lot of points. And I get it. Jake Browning did not look good last week at all. But I'm just
No.
not ready to like completely just jump off the deep end here and be like, I feel like there's an opportunity for them to sort of tighten up, figure out what they can and can't do. And, the Broncos defense is very good, much like the Vikings defense. I get it,
Mhm.
but laying 7.5 points is a lot. So I'm going to take the points here in the 7.5 with Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think I'm with you here because it's just I gotta see more out of Bo Nix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fourth down play where it's like, yeah, we're gonna run it because it's 4th and 1, and then
Mhm.
they did the same thing in Tennessee. Like Sean Payton loves this move where he just goes, hey, I'm gonna get the entire field and 1-on-1 for Cortland Sutton, and he's gonna be
Mhm.
able to kind of just make the play, and like he does,
Yeah.
and they get that touchdown. So the numbers look a lot better in the end for Bo Nix, but like man, if it's not for that play, like the numbers look pretty grim. And so I always say, like, I'm looking for a defense to be able to cover a big number, right? Because you have to take the
Mhm.
lead and then you got to hold the lead. I can't. Maybe it's because we watched that Titans game in the first week where it's just like, man, felt like a lot of settling for field goals or like barely getting into field goal range, and the offense just isn't quite there for the Broncos. So yeah, man, like this for me is the starting point of like +7.5, and we'll trust that Browning can be better because the market rating for the Bengals for this game to be where it's lined has cratered to the point of 35 out of 100. And you
Yeah.
go, well, man, they just got smoked by the Vikings. Like maybe that's deserved. But again, it's a scenario where, yeah, there's 2 defensive touchdowns by the same guy in the first half. And so, yeah, a lot of people are going to be bummed out. I got to think the Bengals are better than the Dolphins, which is currently the rating that they're sharing, the level that they're sharing with
Yeah.
there, and significantly better than the Jets and Giants, who are right behind them as sort of 32s out of 100. So again, if you just go, give me just a below average Bengals performance, a 40, a 45 type of a performance. That point, I got to dare the Broncos to be a 60, 65. And like we have not seen that this year from the Broncos as much as we hoped we would see it and have them be that contender to take the crown from the Chiefs. Well, they sort of like just let the Chargers have the crown last week.
Yeah.
And it seems like that is going to be the new king, at least this season, of the AFC West. So yeah, I'm expecting better out of the Bengals. I'm expecting the same out of the Broncos, and that's probably going to translate into a game that's a little bit tighter than this point spread suggests.
Yeah, no, great. And a interesting Monday nighter for sure, where like I don't really know what's gonna happen in this game, but I do know this. I'd like to being on the side with the 7.5 points for sure. But
Yeah.
before we get to this week's action, I know you got a lot more information for the people. Where can they find all of that info that you provide?
Yeah, buddy, at MRS Authentic on Twitter. Anything you're going to get from me, you're going to get through there. But moreover, go to substack.com or download the Substack app. Type in the window sports betting, the window, Matt Russell, sports betting, Matt Russell, any combination of those sorts of things, you're gonna find yourself at the window via Substack. But like I said, at MRS Authentic on Twitter is gonna find you, or gonna get you to that location, and also to the stuff that I do over at Yahoo Sports, Survivor analysis, free Monday Night Football preview. We absolutely sledgehammered the game on
Yeah.
Monday, just sweeping the board, 3 player props, 2 anytime touchdowns, and the Lions money line for that game. So that was a big windfall. Free to everybody over at Yahoo Sports. So go check that out.
Amazing stuff as always, my dude. And of course, you can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is a Clutch Picks betting podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.